Welcome to Guarantee Profitability for Your Clients and Your Practice. I'm Professor Dawn Fotopulos. The following presentation was given at Scaling New Heights in Orlando, Florida in 2017. There were so many people that reached out to me to say, oh, this is so wonderful, and there were so many people that didn't have a chance to see it. So here it is for you, and let's go through it. So the agenda is basically I'll go through a little introduction about who I am, how to refine your practice. This is specifically targeting accounting professionals. And then, of course, everything we're talking about here for your practice is applicable for your small business owners. A few key takeaways, what the problem is, the real problem, not what we think it is. I want to take you through some of the bad assumptions that we have. I call them myths and truths. There are three primary discovery areas of where profits hide in every single business. Every single one, there is no exception. And then once we discover where those profits are hiding, then what is the process we can go through to actually unlock those? So how to capture, analyze the data, and then of course what the action plan is to really realize those hidden profits. I want to take you through a few case studies and then the step-by-step plan. Okay? So, who is Dawn Fotopulos? Most of you know me. I am Associate Professor of Business at the King's College in New York City. I am also the award-winning author of Accounting for the Number Phobic, a survival guide for small business owners. It won Best Business Book a few years back, and that's Penny, the practical professional who's reading the book. I adore her. And there is Carol Oliver. She is my soulmate, an amazing lady that works for Woodard. I've worked also with Woodard Education in their institute. What you're going to be watching today actually was piloted through the Woodard Institute. We had some amazing pro advisors and CPAs that went through it with absolute rave reviews. And then I've also been a guest speaker at Woodard Group. So I have a great affection for the Woodard organization, and I'm just so thrilled that you're here. So let's talk a little bit about refining your practice, especially in three key areas, right? Whether you are a product or a service business. You got to specialize in the right services, not just what is possible, but what is possible and profitable, right? Not just what you can do, but what's really going to give you the best return on investment. You got to apply the right pricing principles. And I got to tell you, I know thousands, tens of thousands of small business owners up close and personal. I've been at this in the trenches 20 years. And most business owners, including accounting professionals, leave a lot of money on the table. So I want to take you through three primary benchmarks for pricing. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about the right client, not just any client, not just to ring the cash register, but to get the right clients. Okay, so those three key areas, the right services, right pricing, and right client base. Okay, so there are essentially three key areas that profits hide in most businesses, and they are the following. The pricing model is usually off. The product and service line is in most cases too extensive. We're trying to do too much. And then the third area is in the client base. And I want to take you through those key areas. Once we do that, those are the drivers, right? We want to know what the key drivers are of your business, of the profitability, of the ROI in your business. And of course, one of those is gross margin. One of those is also repeat purchase. Another one is referrals from existing clients. These are the drivers of profitability where in fact you get positive and not negative leverage for your time. Then I want to take you through how to analyze the data in your practice, and then how to also analyze the data in your clients' businesses, how to put together an action plan, because that action plan is going to be really important in sort of identifying where those aha moments are. And then of course, how do we make that real? How do we put teeth in that plan so we can actually get a return on investment, a better return on investment for our time implementing that plan? And that's where the key to transformation is. So all of these circles have that integration right there. If we can discover the key three areas, know what drives our profitability, uncover the data, right? Put it in a way that we can analyze it and make some sense based on what we see and prioritization. what kind of action plan should we put together, and then how do we make that action plan real, and then the transformation happens when we actually measure the results. Okay, so that's kind of what this circle is all about. And oh, by the way, you don't just do it once. This is an iterative circle, okay, series of circles or activities. Okay, so the problem, you've heard this. I know you've heard this a million times, and some of you have said this yourselves. I'm killing myself. I'm not making any money. Or, I want to grow my business. I hear that all the time. Grow your business. This is the way to grow your business, right? All the gurus on Facebook and LinkedIn. Grow your business. Listen to me, friends. You don't want to grow your business. You want to grow your profitability, and you want to grow your cash flow. Okay? That's what you want. You don't want more customers. You want more profitable revenues. And what I'm submitting to you is this, that the place you're going to find them is in your existing client base. So part of what this whole exercise is about is I want to cull out or kind of cut away or trim all of the unproductive stuff, the pricing that makes no sense, the products, the services that you're offering that really are either lost leaders, or they're just losing you money, or they're draining you of energy, or whatever it is. Get rid of the clients that are high maintenance, that aren't really paying the bills, but frankly are more aggravation than they're worth. And when you put all that stuff together, Jim Collins of Good to Great fame calls it the doom loop. And I love that because it's sort of shorthand for this particular dynamic. I have seen this so many times, my goodness, and you have seen it too, and you've seen it a lot with your small business owners. Okay, I can't pay my bills, or I'm struggling to pay the bills. So what am I going to do? Okay, my solution is I'm going to grow my way out of the problem. And by growing, I mean growing top line, right? Growing sales. I'm going to sell my way out of the problem. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to bring in more customers into my orbit. I'm going to grow my business. But you know and I know that growing top line is not the same thing as growing bottom line. But this is the specious assumption, right? If I grow the business, therefore, it's going to make it easier for me to pay the bills. But that's not true if you're not taking on profitable revenues. So in order to do this, what a lot of people do is they go into that self-deprecating marketing cycle. Well, in order for me to close more business, I got to discount my prices because I'm not closing business fast enough. So I cut my prices to grow faster. And yeah, I attract more customers. I don't attract the right customers, but I attract a whole lot more of them. And what ends up happening is this buys you a whole lot more work at a lot less profit. It's exactly the opposite of what you really want and frankly need. So what ends up happening is we don't end up scaling profitability, we end up scaling losses, because this way, cutting prices to grow a business, unless you have 80-90% gross margin, is the kiss of death. What we're really doing here is we're destroying our gross margin or our gross profit. We're destroying profitability, and then we're taking on a whole lot more work. We got a lot more clients we have to service, and unless we're in Walmart where we're crazy efficient, we're driving ourselves into the ground, we're working harder, and we have less to show for it. And then we really can't pay our bills, okay? So when you talk about the doom loop, this is what it is. And we keep doing this over and over again. I want you to know that JP Morgan Institute said 75% of small businesses in the U.S. have less than 30 days of cash on hand. 75%. 25% of those have less than 14 days of cash on hand. That's not a problem. That's an epidemic, okay? And I'm telling you the reason why they don't have cash is they are in the doom loop. And a lot of accounting professionals are in the doom loop, and it breaks my heart because you guys are the fulcrum of the U.S. economy. You are the great unsung heroes of the U.S. economy, and you are not number crunchers. You are brilliant analysts. And what I want to do is, as I take you through this methodology I'm calling the Hidden Profit Roadmap, I want to take you through it because this is going to convert what you do every day from just simply trading keystrokes for dollars to really being a business advisor, because you are sitting on all the data, you have all the experience, you know how to fix this. So I want you to keep this doom loop in mind, because what this methodology is going to do is reverse this trend, okay? All right, first thing, the truth, okay? And you got to put your feet there, plant your feet there. You run your business on gross profit, you don't run it on revenues. If you get this in your head, now you know this instinctively, your business owners don't. They have no idea what gross profit even is. They don't know how to measure it. They don't know where it shows up on their financials. They don't know. They think everything is about sales, and it isn't. You run your business on gross profit because if we can improve gross profit without taking on more customers, that's the win. Okay, that's where you're going to win. So with product businesses, we want to look at gross profit rather by product, and with service businesses, we want to look at gross profit by project or by hour of time invested. Okay, so remember, if we run our business on gross profit and we keep a keen eye on that number and we can improve that number and keep our cost basis the same, then in theory what should happen is we should improve our profitability dramatically. Now, I just want you to know I have personally turned around 400 businesses that would have gone bankrupt with this kind of thinking. So this is not theory anymore. I have applied this in 6 different industries. All right, let's talk myths and truths about a product or service line. Okay, most service providers think the more services they can offer, the stronger their profitability is going to be. Okay, they think if I have a bigger suite, a broader suite of products and services to offer, that's more for people to choose from, and you're not going to be more profitable. But what ends up happening is we end up spreading ourselves like peanut butter across the landscape, and we're doing all kinds of stuff that we may not be competitively advantaged to do, stuff that we don't like to do, but we think we have to do it in order to be in business. And what ends up happening is we're not known for anything in particular, and we end up becoming a commodity. And a commodity is basically something that is interchangeable with any other provider. Nobody looks at us and says, I'm going to go to Dawn Fotopulos because she's going to really show me how to get out of the doom loop. They don't know who Dawn Fotopulos is, so they just assume Dawn is a trainer just like everybody else, which I don't believe I am, quite frankly, because I love working with my accounting professionals in a way that nobody else really has. So the bottom line is this: it's a myth. You don't have to offer more services to be more profitable. In fact, if you pare down the services that you offer and you really add value to the services that you do offer, that's the win. Okay, that's the direction we really want to go in. We want to consolidate your effort, become much more efficient at what you do. Okay, so here are some other myths and truths about pricing. Okay, these are myths about pricing. And I've heard this a million times, and you have too. And maybe you haven't heard this from your business owners, but you may have even said this to yourself. So let's take a look in the mirror, okay? I can't raise my prices higher than my competition because if I do, I'm going to lose them. All my customers are going to go to my competition. That's a lie, by the way. The next lie is, well, I can't raise my prices. If I raise my prices, nobody's going to buy from me. Have you tested that assumption? And by the way, when you raise prices, you don't raise them in a vacuum. There is a certain way that you raise prices in order for your demand not to fall off a cliff. There is a way to do that. So if you raise prices tomorrow by 5%, or if it was the turn of a new year and you raise prices by 5%, I guarantee you your demand for your services would not go down by 100%. It wouldn't. Your greatest fears will not happen. But at any rate, the last myth, okay, the last lie that a lot of people are operating on, including most small business owners, I have to be the lowest price in my market in order to keep my customers. No, you don't. Absolutely not. If you're a specialist, if you got special credentials, if you just do something better, faster than anybody else, you absolutely don't have to be the lowest price, and nor should you ever be the lowest price. Okay, because what happens is when you are the lowest price, you attract what I call price jumpers. And they will leave you the second they smell that somebody else is cheaper. You don't want price jumpers. You want people that are going to be strategic partners with you. But these are all lies, my friend. And I'm going to prove it to you. Okay? Here's another myth. Okay? I have to protect my largest clients because they're my most profitable. Largest meaning largest in revenue. I want you to remember something. Just because a client is large in revenue or generates a lot in revenues does not mean they are profitable. And they're not necessarily profitable for 2 primary reasons. The first is if they're a big customer, they know they're a big customer. And in all likelihood, they've negotiated hard on price. So the gross profit on those customers is probably dollar for dollar, not nearly what it is on some of your smaller customers. That's for starters. The second thing is most large customers demand an awful lot of after-sales servicing, and that costs you money. And that's okay as long as they're profitable, but do not assume a large customer is your most profitable. And in fact, I know many small business owners that have large customers that are basically holding them hostage because they think they can't get rid of those customers, and they generate so much of their revenues that they're afraid to. So part of the way we're going to win here is we need to diversify our client base. Better to have a whole lot of small customers than one big 900-pound gorilla and a few little minnows in your client base. Dell Computer built a multi-billion-dollar business with that kind of thinking. But the bottom line is, if a large customer doesn't pay their bills, doesn't play nicely in the sandbox, requires you to work 24/7, doesn't give you adequate gross margin for all your time and energy, it may be worth it for you to send that customer on a silver platter to your competition. But we'll talk about that. Okay. So the thing is, every person who runs a business has to make these difficult trade-offs. And all of us, no matter what we do, what kind of business we run, we only have three assets that are invested in our business. Only three, when you really think about it. Time, we all have 24 hours in a day. Nobody, as far as I know, has more time than that, right? We all have the same 24-hour time frame. Talent, now talent's going to vary dramatically. Talent and experience, we'll put that all under the same umbrella, right? Time, talent, and then treasure, any investment capital. So what we have to do is we have to be really crisp and really clear on where we want to invest our time, our talent, and our treasure, because all of us have to make these trade-offs. So what I want to do is I want to give you a framework, an analytic framework for helping you decide where you should focus and what you should de-emphasize, and frankly what you should walk away from. Okay, so remember something, and these are sort of our base assumptions. A bigger business is not necessarily a better business, and it's not necessarily a more profitable business. Now, I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but I want you to really wrap your mind around that and coach your business clients that this is true. You don't want bigger, you want more profitable. So more is not the goal. In other words, more revenues is not the goal. The real goal is either flat or even lower revenues if it means a higher gross profit. If we can do this, right, if we can cut out the dead wood in our client base, if we can cut out the dead wood in the products and services that we're offering and only focus on those things that are generating real gross profit and only working with those clients that generate real gross profit, then guess what? We're working less, and hour for hour we're generating a whole lot more in not just gross profit but in bottom line. So let's take a look at the product and service line review. Okay, this is the first step in the analytic process of unlocking the hidden profit in any business. Okay, so you can take this presentation, by the way, and you can apply this to every single one of your clients tomorrow. So let's take a look. This is my assumption. Every product or service that you offer has to work as hard for your business as you do. That means at the margin, every single time you ring the cash register and you sell X, I don't care what it is, if it's a product, a service, anything, there has to be a benchmark, some kind of a hurdle rate that the price of that thing jumps in order for it to be worth it to you to offer it. And if it doesn't, you have to either consider repricing it, adding value to it, or dropping it from your line, or talking to a new target audience about it. But something has to give. But you got to think really clearly about the marginal benefit of offering one more service. And I have this image over here of this poor man. Look at him carrying this wheelbarrow just filled with stuff. And as I looked at him and I said, oh my gosh, this is a metaphor for every single small business owner I've ever seen, right? Everybody tells you to do more and do more and do more and do more and add more burden, add more burden, add more burden. But nobody tells you what to stop doing, okay? And I'm here to tell you that there are things that you can really stop doing and it's okay. And it's going to open up capacity to do things that really are going to make sense and really give you a return on investment, okay? So the marginal benefit of offering one more service we need to look at clearly and say if it doesn't meet the hurdle rate, it's okay if we don't offer it because we can still be wildly profitable. So the first thing you're going to do is you got to look at each of the product lines or each of the services that you offer, and you need to look to see which ones are generating gross profit and at what percentage rate. So if you have a product or service line that and you have certain services, let's say, that don't generate at least a 25 to 30% gross margin, then something has to give on that. And remember, I said to you, either change the price, change your target audience, drop it altogether. I mean, there are things that you can do, but you need to think about that because every time you ring the cash register on that thing, whatever it is, it's actually losing you money. So the first thing is you got to capture the data. Second thing you're going to do is you're going to analyze that data. You're going to look at your products and services line by line and see what did it generate in revenues in the last 12 months and what did it generate in gross profit, because that's the key. And we're going to cross-reference those two things because you're going to find a number of things are going to be true. The first is some of the things that generate a lot in revenues do not generate a whole heck of a lot in gross profit. Okay, some of the things that generate a lot in gross profit you haven't focused on in terms of sales. So it doesn't generate a lot in revenues, but man, it really could if you focused your sales efforts there. So analyzing the data is cross-referencing what's generating revenues in sales and what's actually generating gross margin and where are the risks and where are the opportunities. Last but not least, you're going to put together your action plan, which is going to help you prioritize which products and services you should be focused on, which one you should de-emphasize, and which ones you really need to drop from your product or service line. Okay, and that's the product and service line review. Let me give you a little example, a real life example. So this lovely lady over here is a photographer, and she took this picture of me, which I've always been thrilled with. She made me look like Diane Sawyer. And her name is Denise Zitzman, and she's been a photographer for several decades. She's very, very good at what she does. Believe it or not, that photograph is unretouched because her lighting is that great. She's in the Ohio market, and after we finished doing the shoot that actually generated that portrait, we're having coffee, and I said, "So Dee, how's the business going?" And she burst out crying, which of course is a bad answer. And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I'm killing myself. I'm not making any money." So what we did was we looked at her service review, right? We looked at what she does to ring the cash register, and she basically has 3 different types of photo shoots that she offers. She shoots weddings, she does portrait photography, just like you see there, and she also did groups. She does groups, schools, families, what have you. So I looked at how much she generated in revenues with each of those 3 major service offerings. And it ended up that she made about 70% of her revenues from shooting weddings. She was busy 40 weekends out of the year, right? Everybody always gets married on the weekends. So she said, "I make a lot of money on weddings." I said, "Well, you know what? Let's see if that's true." She did about 25% of her revenues, about 20% of her revenues on portraits, and then 5% on the groups. So we figured out that when she shot a wedding, it was an 18-hour day for her. She's on her feet for 18 hours. She's got to break down her entire studio, throw it in the truck, and set up and break down like 5 times during the day at all the various venues. And it's an exhausting day. It's a lot of wear and tear on her equipment, and she also has to hire people to help her because there's a lot going on. And so that also hits her gross margin. So it's exhausting, high opportunity cost, high actual costs of shooting a wedding. What we figured out was in the same amount of time it took her to shoot a wedding in 18 hours, she could shoot 9 portrait sessions. And on each portrait session, she made about $500, which is the equivalent of $4,500 for a single wedding. We figured out she was only making about $1,000 in gross profit for a wedding. She ended up paying herself like $20 an hour after expenses. And I said, you know what, Dee? It just doesn't pay to shoot a wedding. If you're going to shoot a wedding, do it because you love the bride. Don't do it because you're making money. Because the reality is, if you were shooting portraits in the same amount of time that you were using to shoot these weddings, you'd make a ton more money. Or said a different way, you actually could shoot a quarter of the number of portrait photography sittings that you would normally use to generate the same amount of money with 4 times the weddings. You could make 4 times the money with the same amount of time, or you could make the same amount of money in a quarter of the time. Are you with me? So the traps to avoid, especially for service providers, is how much of a time drain is a particular service. So you can't just look at how much money you're earning. You have to look at how much money you're earning relative to the amount of effort it's taking. So what we said to Denise was the following, and this is obvious now, right? We said, listen, de-emphasize the weddings, emphasize the portraits, and it's wonderful. You can shoot these portraits in your home. You have a studio in your home. You don't even have to go anywhere. And focus your sales efforts on your portraits. And in theory, you should be making a lot of money. And 6 months later, she called me with tears of joy and said, I have $15,000 in the bank at the end of this year. I have never had that in 19 years. And all I did was refocus my efforts. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so the trap to avoid is this idea of just looking at price and not looking at how much time you're spending versus the gross profit that you're earning for each hour that you're working on whatever it is. So you got to look at time. Remember, time, talent, and treasure. You got to look at time versus gross profit. Let's take a look at the power of pricing, the second key area. So we looked at product and service line, right? And rebalancing your product and service line. In a minute, I'll give you another example of how we actually did, how we put the spreadsheets together. The pricing model for your business, your practice, or your small business owner's practice is really important, because most business owners get it wrong. They're too afraid to walk away from business. They underprice what they're doing, and they end up killing themselves and not making any money. And this is part of the doom loop. So I'm going to talk to you about the power of pricing because I want you to really see it. You know this intuitively, but if you were to show some of these slides to your small business owners, they're going to freak out because they're really going to begin to understand the doom loop that they're in. Okay, but the power of pricing can work in their favor. I want to show you how to do that. So the first thing that's really important is to recognize that as a small business owner, you are resource constrained by definition. You are. You're not Walmart. You're a one-man band or you're a small shop, and you have to premium price what you're doing in order for you to have a going concern. You don't have a choice. But you don't premium price just for the sake of it. You don't premium price in a vacuum. You have to premium price according to the value that you're offering. So you need to know what that value is. You need to know how to articulate it. You need to be able to speak to the right target audience who's going to care about that, and then ultimately close new business. So I want to give you 3 benchmarks for pricing. And this, by the way, is not Dawn Fotopulos. This comes from Harvard Business School, Philip Kotler of Harvard Business School. So there are essentially 3 benchmarks for pricing. Nobody ever talks about this but me. And I think it's going to be really useful for you. So think about a thermometer, right? And you have 3 different primary stops on that thermometer. So the lowest bound in pricing, the absolute minimum you should be charging is cost, whatever that hour costs you or whatever that item costs you, plus a premium of 45%. You need to be able to mark up what you're doing at least by 45% to clear that 30%, 32% gross margin hurdle that we were talking about. Okay. Now the bottom line is this: your clients they don't care what your cost basis is. That's an internal number, but you need to know what that cost basis is. And let me tell you the trap that I've seen with service businesses when we talk about cost plus pricing. All of the contractors, all the guys, the web designers, IT consultants, and what have you, they put a lot of their effort that should be in direct cost, right, to deliver whatever it is to the client. They put it in SG&A on the profit and loss statement. And that's a problem, because what it does is it makes the project look more profitable than it actually is, or it makes the consulting gig look more profitable than it actually is. So the thing to look for when you're doing an audit with your service provider, small business owners, is take a look at how they're handling direct labor and make sure that direct labor is captured right beneath revenues, so that you get a really clear understanding of what gross profit is. Okay, but cost plus fully loaded cost, right, labor cost plus 45% is what you're after in the lower bounds. If you can't get that, you either have to get out of the business, raise your price, raise your value, and then raise your price, but something's got to give. Comparing apples to apples with competition. Let's assume competition is your middle bound. Okay, competitive pricing. You want to be competitive with what your competition is charging. Well, yes and no. First thing is, you got to make sure that what competition is delivering is equivalent to what you're delivering, or is equivalent to what your client's client is delivering. So what your small business owner's client is receiving, right? What's the value? So if competition is really underpricing things, but they're doing a terrible job in customer service, then you know what? They're creating friction costs. The bottom line is this: you need to know why your business exists, you need to know what makes you special and different, and you need to make the competition irrelevant. Do not price according to the competition simply because that's what they're pricing, okay? And they may be pricing something. I had this experience actually with a wonderful pro advisor named Julie. She said, you know, it was interesting. The client fired me because they said it was too expensive. And then they hired my competition in the same town. Competition called me. This is a great story. Competition called me and told me that my client hired them. And they said, and we asked the client what you were doing for them. And when we saw all the work that you were doing and what you were charging them, we said, we're not doing any of this. We're not doing half of this. And we're going to charge them twice the money. So, Julie, we just thought you'd like to know. Bottom line is, they fired that accountant. They hired Julie back. They ended up paying her 3 times what she was charging them before. The point is this: you don't get paid for what you do. You get paid for what you deliver. Okay? It has nothing to do with, not nothing, but less to do with how much time you spend, far more to do with what you are actually delivering for the client. How much are you helping them generate more profitability? How much are you helping them reduce costs, right? How much are you helping them reduce cycle time, improve productivity, reduce risk? All of those things should factor into what you charge. But remember, you got to compare apples to apples. Don't assume just because the competition's cheaper that you've got to lower your prices. Don't get into a price war, because there's no way out of that quicksand. Okay? True economic value is your upper bound. This is what you're really worth. This makes your cost irrelevant. It makes your competition irrelevant. Your true economic value has nothing to do with your cost structure. It has nothing to do with what else is going on in the marketplace. It has everything to do with what your customers are willing to pay for what you deliver to them. Remember, you don't get paid for what you do. You get paid for what you deliver. Now, as an analyst, as a number cruncher, okay, you do the books, you do the reconciliations, you do the tax prep. As a business advisor, you are giving your client the roadmap to improve double, triple profitability, double, triple cash flow. You know what? That's huge value to them. And even if they're paying you a couple of $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 to give them this advice, it is a cheap date if they can increase their profitability by $20,000, $50,000, $100,000. And I've heard that there are pro advisors that were paid $6,500 and they found $500,000 more in profitability for their clients. Okay, so in that case, would you spend $20,000 to get a $600,000 to find $600,000 in additional profitability? I think that's a pretty good ROI. True economic value has nothing to do with your hours. It has nothing to do with competition. It has everything to do with how your advice improves the profitability and cash flow for your client. Okay. So here's the challenge with cost plus pricing, and I've seen this many times. The first thing you want to do is you want to set your gross profit goal. And I talked about 30%. Is there magic about 30%? No, not really. But after doing research for 20 years, it's not a bad benchmark. It may be different in your industry and you should know what that is, but I'm using that right now just as our jump off point. So cost plus 45% will get us to that 30% goal. But here's the deal. Most small business owners get the math wrong. I'm not kidding you, they do. Even if you were to say to them, okay, you got to mark up your cost by 45%, whatever, they don't know what you're talking about. So let me give you an example. I want you to ask the question and just test me, okay? Test me to see if this is true. I want you to ask your client if something costs you $10 and you want a 30% gross profit, what would you charge on that item? Okay, ask that question and just wait to see the response that you get. And in 99% of the time, people are going to tell you they want to charge $13 because they just take 30% of 10 bucks and they add it together and they end up with $13. But here's the problem, and you know this because you're math people. If the price is $13, the gross margin on $13 is 3 out of 13, which is 23%, not 30%. In order for us to clear that 30% gross margin, the minimum clearing price needs to be $10 plus about a 42% markup, which gets us to that $14.20. I said 45% because that keeps us out of hot water. Okay? But here's the challenge. Most small business owners don't know this. So what's happening is they're buying something at 10 bucks, they're marking it up by what they think is 30%. So they're marking it up by 30%, and they think that's going to give them a 30% gross margin, but it doesn't. It gives them a 23% gross margin. And they're doing this hundreds or thousands of times a month, a quarter, a year, and they can't figure out why they can't pay their bills. They can't pay their bills because their gross profit is too low, or their expenses are too high, or both. But the bottom line is, if you can't get that minimum clearing price of $14.20, in other words, clients aren't paying that, you got to either increase value, you got to improve the evidence that the value is there, and $14.20 is a cheap date. Remember I told you 60,000 versus 500,000? Or you got to be more compelling. You got to find a way to communicate this in a more compelling way, or you got to find the right target audience, okay? But something's got to give. You're not going to make enough money at 23% gross profit in order to stay in business as a viable enterprise long term. And why is that? Because all of your expenses are running away from you, right? Healthcare is going up, taxes are going up, expenses, insurance is going up, everything is going up, minimum wage is going up. So we got to have a minimum benchmark for gross profit in order for us to build these minimally viable, long-term viable small businesses and small business practices, okay? So when we think about the mid-range of pricing, remember we talked about competitor pricing, I want to give you some things to think about that are really going to help you gain a backbone in terms of pricing higher than your competition. Okay, I'm going to challenge you to do that. Don't assume your competitor is better. Don't assume that. Go out into the marketplace, find out where their weakness is. Really, go out as a buyer or find somebody that you know who's close to you, who's in your corner, who can find out for you. But you've got to constantly have your ear to the ground. Don't just look at what they're charging. Look at what they're doing and how well they're doing it for what they're charging for it. So I joke and I say, keep your enemies closer. You got to do your homework. And I know we're all busy and all of that, but you can learn an awful lot, especially from people like suppliers who can see across an industry and say, where are people like me doing the job? Who's doing the job? And where are they really falling down? Where are the weaknesses that you see? And they'll tell you, right? So remember I said compare apples to apples. You got to know where your competition is weak, and here's the great news. Your competition is always weak somewhere. They are. So if you go in knowing that, it gives you a little bit of confidence. Then it means you just have to find out where they're weak, right? Then that's a much easier task. And then you got to know where you're strong or comparatively advantaged. And you are. There's going to be an area where you really shine. And you know where you're going to find that out? Your customers are going to tell you, or they have been telling you and you just haven't been paying attention. So I want to show you from a pricing standpoint, okay, this green area is where you're going to make money. This is where you're going to make the most money. This is where you can charge a premium, and each one of these vectors represents one of these bullets. So over here, this is where your great strength is. This is where you're better than anybody else. And everybody knows that when they need help with a law practice, they go to Gail Kersop. There is just no question that woman is a crackerjack. She specializes. There's nobody better. And if you're a lawyer and you're getting audited, you beat a fast door to Gail Kersop's office, and she'll tell you what it is. You don't tell her what you're willing to pay, because you know what? You'll pay anything to get out of an audit, and she is amazing. So where's your great strength? Where's your competition great weakness? Where are they not doing the job? And it could be they're not doing the job in the after sales servicing. It could be implementation is bad. It could be follow-up is bad. There are 1,000 things that could be bad. But you got to find out what those weaknesses are. So your strength, competition's weakness. If it was just those two things, it's not enough, because we need to know where the marketplace has the most demand too. So if you're strong and they're weak and there are 3 people in the entire marketplace that need what you do, that's a problem, because it's not critical mass. So we need these 3 vectors together to find out where we're going to make the most money. Does that make sense? Okay. And it's up to you to find out that intersection. So true economic value is your highest price bound, but it's based on worth, not on cost, right? It's based on what is somebody willing to pay. And what it also does, by capturing evidence and people's testimonials, your clients' testimonials, and then also have your small business owners do the same thing, it uncommoditizes your services. You're not interchangeable anymore with just anybody. Julie was really not interchangeable. And the client didn't know that at first until they fired her, and then they realized what they really had and they hired her back. So good for Julie that she was willing to even work with these people, but she tripled her price. She said, hey, listen, if you're going to play games like this, then this is what I'm going to charge you. And the answer is you're going to pay it, or you go find somebody else. And they were so desperate for her that they paid it. So at any rate, we want to make your competition irrelevant, but it's really important that you prove your value in order to charge and price on a true economic value basis. Okay, so remember something. When we're trying to tie price to value, you need to remember that there's actually an equation for that. There is value, okay, the value, which is really the first stop in deciding what you're going to price something at, is the end benefit to the client over what you're asking them to pay for it. And the end benefit is essentially what's in it for them. Right? What are they going to get? If you're going to reduce friction costs, if you're going to improve accuracy, if you're going to reduce the likelihood that they're going to be audited, if you're going to find 50% more profit in 4 weeks in a record time for them, all of those things are huge end benefits, huge. And they're worth so much. And so if I asked you to give me $100 and I guaranteed you 10,000, 3 months from now, no risk to principal, would you do that trade? Of course you would. You do it 1,000,000 times a day. But you got to prove it. And you prove it by the evidence of what you've already done and by the evidence of what your past clients have already said about you. And that's very powerful, of course, because there are other people talking about you and not you talking about yourself. So remember something, and this is a Dawnism. Yeah, you get paid. You don't get paid for what you do. You get paid for what you deliver, right? And you get paid for delivering results. If you keep that in the forefront of your mind, that will convert your practice from being a number cruncher to being a business advisor. This, my friends, is the fulcrum on which you can shift the balance of your practice from being a number cruncher to being a business advisor, because this is what you're delivering, increased profitability and cash flow. That's absolutely golden. It makes you irreplaceable. Okay, so let's talk about some testimonials. I love these because around tax season I see them all over Facebook. You guys do heroics around tax time. I know you do. You unwind these crazy Gordian knots of people dumping trainloads of receipts and unreconciled accounts and whatever. You have unbelievable stories around audits with the IRS and doing forensic accounting when the partner takes off or the partner dies or the partner runs off with the money or whatever the story is. Industry focused, you all have these war stories. The war stories are important. You know why? Because it demonstrates who you are in the fire. Because everybody can work pretty well when things are fine, but as a professional, you really prove yourself when you're in the fire. So, um, here are some of the testimonials I saw pro advisors give, and it was just mind blowing. I found an additional $400,000 in profit for my client's business. Okay, if that doesn't make you stop, I don't know what will. I saved a nonprofit from losing its nonprofit status due to poor accounting practices. That is a very big deal because to get that nonprofit status back is an absolute nightmare. So, this person who did that, who changed and turned this whole situation around, saved the rear end of that entire organization by doing what she did. Here's another one. My client passed an IRS audit with flying colors because I was able to fix the books. This is no small thing. In fact, behind that story, the business owner was going to go to jail. So I don't know. What's your freedom worth, right? I mean, these are enormous stories. So here you have this little guy here jumping for joy. All right. So I went through Facebook around tax season. I saw a whole bunch of things, and I just did a little montage here. The story behind this is the night before April the 15th, this accounting professional got dumped on by a client, and the little note that went with this said, "I think there are some dupes in here. I haven't had time to go through them, but I just thought maybe that would be helpful." Okay, this is the kind of client that needs to have a come to Jesus conversation. And if they still don't get it, that they can't pull stuff like this, then you need to hand them to your competition. We don't need clients like this. Over here, this is Dawn Brolin, who's a great lady. And she put this picture here because they actually locked her into her office. She was there till 2 a.m. and she didn't know that the security gate had gone down. She had to sleep in her office. I mean, crazy stuff, right? Crazy stuff. But you know what? You guys are the unsung heroes of the U.S. economy. And I am falling on my sword to give you the kind of visibility and respect that you deserve and to help you make that transition from a number cruncher to a true business advisor, because that's where you're also going to be blessed as you bless others. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. We're going to have a little true economic value exercise. You can do this on your own. I'm going to just continue in this presentation. But I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to write down whatever you can remember of at least one compliment that you've been given recently from a client. "Oh, we couldn't have done it without you." "Oh, Fred was just amazing. He's so patient and we could have never gotten through that audit without him." I want you to write those down, and then they need to show up everywhere in your life. They need to show up on your business cards. They need to show up on your website. They need to show up everywhere. And then I want you to think about one incident where you did heroics, right? What was the situation? What did you do? What were the results? It's like a little mini case study. We did that with the photographer, as you can recall. Okay, when you're pricing services, there are things that are going to enable you to premium price. So if you're an expert, right, there's expert pricing. If you have specialty knowledge, industry specialists, if you're an industry specialist, if you have special credentials, there's a lot of that in the accounting professional community. But the most important thing is you always have to provide the evidence. But all of these things bode well for premium pricing. That's part of your positioning. So it's very important you capture every single compliment, and it is no time for humility. You got to write it down. And even if you don't do anything with it initially, you got to have a place, a file, or something where you capture these, because you need to be able to use them, because that frankly is your portfolio, okay? And not just the compliments, but the results of what happened as a result of your work, okay? And another way to think about that is, if you were not present, what kind of results would not have occurred? That's the way you know what your marginal value is. The other thing too is, Your business is fraught with a lot of fear, a lot of emotion, a lot of high drama. If you are the kind of person that calms everything down and gives everybody the opportunity to just sort of wade through it, you get through it without, anything breaking, those psychic benefits are really a big deal. And so it's not just what you do, but how you do it. If you are able to hold somebody's hand, this happened to an accounting professional. She held the hand of a woman whose partner had died. And then as soon as the partner died, they got slammed with an IRS audit. I mean, let's talk about stress. She was amazing. And everybody got through it without a nervous breakdown. This is no small thing. And I'm sure you have stories similar to that. So the most important thing in connecting value to price is you got to answer that key diagnostic question. Why do customers buy from you instead of your competition? You have to answer that question, because if you don't, a prospective client is going to fill those assumptions with negative assumptions, because that's human nature. So you got to answer that key question. This is actually a marketing question. It's the most important one. Why do customers buy from you? Or why do customers buy from your client instead of the competition? And in capturing these evidence, right, these little mini case studies, it answers this particular question. And if you've been in business long enough, you've got enough case studies that you can talk about this stuff. And somewhere in those stories, someone's going to see evidence of what they're going through too. That's why the stories are so important. Because you know what? Solomon is right. There's nothing new under the sun. All right, pricing it right. If your closure rates, and I'm the only one who talks about this, if your closure rates are higher than 25 or 30%, you're pricing too low. You heard me right. If out of 10 prospects that come to you to think about buying from you, you close more than 3 of them, your prices are too low. You're taking on way too much work and you're not making enough money from it. So raise your prices. That will automatically have some people gasping for air, which is okay, by the way. It's okay if someone runs away from you screaming, saying, "Oh, they're too expensive, I can't handle it." That's great. You don't know where the line in the sand is until that starts to happen. Because you can't take on everybody. You can't. I had somebody who was closing 80%. I said, "That's terrible." And she was shocked. I said, "Yeah, it's terrible. You're probably not getting any sleep at night." She said, "I'm not." "How did you know?" "Because she's closing too much business." So raise your prices, reduce the amount of business you're taking on, and just make sure that that's business that you can execute with excellence. That's what's key, because excellence is your reputation. And it also has to do with capacity planning. If there are only 24 hours in a day and you got a family, you got personal responsibilities, this is not about working 24/7. Okay, so what you need to do, actually, what I would like to recommend, is think about how many hours you want to work and work backwards, and keep raising your price until you get into those number of hours per week. Okay. So there's a PR agency here in New York. She was closing 80% of her business. This is a woman who was very good at what she did. She was not making any money. I recommended she triple her prices. She started screaming, but she did it. And she had maybe a dozen clients instead of 3 dozen clients. She was able to get 8 hours of sleep, and she had a whole lot more money in the bank. So it doesn't mean that it's just about raising prices. What was important here is she had not captured all the results she was able to deliver to clients. So that was our first stop, and it should be yours too. Capture all those wonderful testimonials. Then you back into price. Those testimonials are your value. Then you back into what you're going to charge for what you do. Okay, so the closure rates really hold the key, and they give you some indication as to whether you're pricing too high or too low. So what we want to do is we want a premium price both now and forever. That's what you want to do. As a small business owner, you have no choice. And if you can't premium price and get that price, you really need to consider if you should be in that business. And forgive me for being so blunt, but you really need to reconsider. Let's take a look at the client base review now. This is the third area, right? Product and service pricing and client base review. A client base is really a portfolio. That's what it is, just like an investment portfolio, and you have a whole bunch of revenue streams. So we talked earlier about those myths and truths, right? A big client is an important client. Well, maybe they are, and maybe they're not. Maybe they're a cash drain and a whole lot of aggravation. So the first thing we want to do in a client-based review is we want to capture client data and we want to segment them according to their size, which ones are high potential and which ones are super demanding, and that's a proxy for take a lot of money to actually service. And we want to do a sales client potential alignment. We want to make sure that we're giving adequate time to those clients that are very high potential, high gross margin, and not over servicing unprofitable clients. That's really the whole point of the client-based review. So there was a landscaper that was spending a lot of time with some large exterior design companies, and they actually had very, very thin gross profit. And what we did was we identified those clients, that is, the accounting professional identified those clients and those services that were low gross margin. They de-emphasized those and they started spending more sales time and service time with those products and services and with those clients that were much higher gross margin. And they ended up finding $60,000 a month more in profitability. So at any rate, the traps to avoid with the client base is really that big versus small. So let me just show you how we gather data and analyze and then plan. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to capture your data by revenues and gross profit. You're going to analyze that data on what we're calling a 2x2 matrix, create an action plan, and then some accountability for implementation. So here's an example of just gathering the data, right? It's just a simple Excel spreadsheet. This spreadsheet, by the way, we have created. All of these things we have created in the course, 50% more profits. So it's all there for you. You don't have to create this. You don't have to worry about it. All the tabs are there. Everything is there for you. We make it nice and simple. So here's the product. Here are these products. This is what the price per unit is. These are what the revenues last year, this year, percentage increase or decreases, and then gross margin per unit and so on. I'm not going to give you these numbers because it's actually proprietary information, but basically this is the way you data gather the information. And then once we do that, we're going to cross-reference gross margin per unit versus revenues to see which ones are high potential, high gross margin, which ones are easy to sell, and where we have competitive advantage. So what we want to do is we want to fill in the stars quadrant first. These are the ones with high gross margin, and they're really easy to sell, and we are unique in the marketplace in that particular or those series of products or services. These are our stars. These are the ones that are working just as hard for our business as we are. Now, potential comes in two quadrants, right? This is high gross margin. It may not be so easy to sell, or we may not have focused on this from a sales effort. So if we did, we could move the potential over here, possibly into the star category. The third priority are the guys that are lower gross margin, but they're pretty easy to sell. Now this, the salespeople go crazy for. What you have to be careful is they're not deep discounting the stuff over here in order to just close the business, because most salespeople are paid commission on revenues, not on gross margin, and someday that's going to change. But at any rate, so first priority, second priority, third priority, the dogs, this is the stuff that is cement shoes on the P&L, on the cash flow statement. Way too expensive to offer, not high enough gross margin, too much aggravation. Let's take these dogs and move them off to the competition, okay? So whether this is products or services, whether this is clients, that's what we want to do. And then our action plan is basically the following. I actually start with the stop doing list because nobody ever tells small business owners what to stop doing. They always pile more and more on. Have you ever noticed that? So start with the stop doing list. Start with the dogs. Don't offer this. Don't service those clients anymore. Or have a conversation with the client and say, listen, these 3 things have to change if we're going to continue to do business. Whenever the contract's up, you renegotiate the terms of the contract, and if they say no, then you got to be willing to walk away. So start with the stop doing list, the do less list. What are the things we should be doing less of, and where should the focus be? Remember that priority, the second priority? Where should we be focusing our sales efforts to move them into the star quadrant? So that's the do more. So what are we going to do today, this week, next week? Who's responsible? And then what's the checkup date? And that checkup date is basically the deadline. Okay, this is the action plan, and again, we've created all these tabs for you in the course 50% more profit. Okay, so when we talk about realizing the hidden profit, we're going to be looking at gross margin by product, project, and by client. So here are some things to remember. Most of the hidden profit that I've seen in all the business turnarounds that I've done is in the existing client base. That's the big head fake. That's the big truth nobody ever talks about. It's like mind-blowing. You don't want to grow your client base. You want to refocus your client base, okay, for the reasons we just said. So most of that hidden profit is in your existing client base, and what I've seen is the high potential clients are being ignored because they're not very large right now, because we're assuming that large is profitable, okay? So you see the trap. The other thing too is most organizations, most small business owners, most accounting professionals, they do not want to raise their prices because they're terrified of losing business. And I want to say something to you. The worst rarely happens. I mean, just your absolute worst case scenario, and write it down and test it. You can always lower your prices. Okay? Lowering the prices is the easiest thing to do. All you have to do is hit the back button on your computer. And then remember that customer testimonials provide the evidence. So what is the goal? You want to offer fewer products, fewer services, or fewer projects at higher prices. That's how you're going to reduce your number of man hours and wear and tear on you. And that's how you're going to get a better return on investment. You want premium pricing. And you want to price according to true economic value, which is why the testimonials become so important, because that's your evidence. And then you want to align your sales efforts with what's going to give you the best ROI. And you saw what we did with the photographer. That was a very simple but profound example. And then client base. Remember that your existing clients are the best source of hidden profit. They are. Because eagles fly together. If you have a really great client and they're great to work with, the likelihood is they're hanging around with other business owners that are just as wonderful. So the product and service line review, you're going to basically laundry list all the products and services line by line. You're going to show the revenues and the gross profit by product and by service. Then you're going to map it on that 2x2 matrix. First priority, second priority, third priority, and dogs. Put your action plan together, and then who's responsible and by what date. You're going to do the same thing with pricing. How is the client currently pricing? I want you to ask yourself, how do I decide what I'm charging? Okay? And then really be honest with yourself. Ask the same question of your client. How did you decide what you're going to charge for that? Then put your 2x2 matrix together, your action plan and your implementation plan. Are you charging according to TEV? Most people aren't because they just don't know how, but now you know some of the secrets. Client base review. Here's a little baby example. All these various clients, which ones are generating the revenues and the gross margin? Those are your stars. Which ones are generating revenues but no gross margin? It means they're not buying a really profitable product or service mix from you. We need to change the mix. We might need to change the pricing. Who knows? But bottom line is, after we capture all this data, we need to put it again on that 2x2 matrix, put an action plan and an implementation plan together. And that's what these different colored tabs are all about. This shows you how to put the list together, and this shows you how to do the 2x2 matrix, and then ultimately the implementation and action plan. So that's the step-by-step action plan to unlock the hidden profit, and that's the time to celebrate. And here's the great news. You don't have to go through all of that in order to find 50% more profits in 4 weeks. Most of the time, if you just get the pricing even right in the right direction, because nobody gets it perfect, you can find 50% more profit, and you can find it within 30 to 60 days. And I'm not blowing smoke. I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times for every kind of business you can imagine. So if you have watched this to the very end and you've got questions, I have a gift for you. And it is the Accounting for the Number Phobic Study Guide. It is a $20 value. I want to make it available to you. And this is really just the beginning. So if you want more, let me tell you what's available. A lot of people come up to me and they go, oh my gosh, it sounds so great. I don't even know where to start. I need help doing this. Well, I want you to know what I did was I took this course and I put it online. It's on the Ruzuku platform right now, and this is the link to it. All you have to do is go there, and the course is phenomenal. All of the representations are there. If you sign up for the course, you get me as your professor, and you're going to watch a lecture, and then you're going to send me personally, okay, not a bot, not a faculty assistant. You're going to send to me some of your homework because you got to fill some stuff in. I review it, and then I give you my comments. So it's real-time feedback. There are no courses out there that care as much as I do. Not just that you take the course, but that you know how to apply it to your practice and to your small business owners. So this is basically what it looks like. It's 8 modules. I'm all about acceleration. I don't want to keep this open-ended. It should not take 2 years for you to see results. I want you to see results in 30, 60, 90 days, okay? And so this is what it looks like. In sessions 1 and 2, I'm going to talk about changing your mindset, which is essentially changing your practice into an advisory practice, finding common ground with your small business clients, getting their commitment, and then setting goals. And this Riptide Visioning Exercise and Hidden Profit Commitment, these are the documents we have created for you. They are interactive. You print them out and you bring them to the client conversation. And it takes you through the conversation step by step. You don't have to remember anything. It's like paint by numbers. It is so easy. And if you don't believe me, ask Hal Rosen or ask Julie Gilmer. They are just geniuses at this point. Sessions 3 and 4. Again, you're going to watch the lectures. Then you're going to have, this is the product line review and the action plan. Then you're going to have the conversation with the client, and you're going to pull the data from the accounting system because you guys are geniuses at that. You're going to go over it with them, their revenues versus gross margin, their 2x2 matrix, and you're going to help them put their action plan together. Now you are formally not a number cruncher. You are formally a business advisor because you're helping them make those hard choices between time, talent, and treasure. Okay, and then they're going to start to see the fruit of it. So that's the product and service line review. Sessions 5 and 6, again, you're going to listen to the lectures, is all about pricing strategy and most importantly, discounting strategy. I didn't get a chance to go through it in this presentation, but there is a way to discount. There is a way to bless a client without putting your bottom line on life support. And I will tell you that I'll show you how to raise prices. I'll show you how and when to discount. And it's fabulous stuff. Nobody ever talks about it, but there's something called the problem with pricing. It's a Harvard Business School pricing tool. That's something that you will get in the course, in addition to accounting for the number phobic, which is the text for the course. That actually is the text that your business owner needs to read, because once they read the first 4 chapters, your conversations in sessions 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 are going to be so much richer, because now they're finally going to understand what you've been talking about. So I'll talk about how to premium price and sell more, and no, I'm not blowing smoke. Discounting strategies that help retain your existing client base and help build that client base. And again, the revenues versus gross margin, your 2x2 matrix, and your action plan with regard to pricing and discounting. Okay, so that's sessions 5 and 6. 7 and 8 take you through your client base strategy and the action plan. So we've got here, this is just basically laying the groundwork, right? Getting the commitment from the client, getting you in that role of advisor, then going through the product line review, pricing review, and portfolio, that is the client base review. And I take you through it step by step. Okay, so all of the worksheets, the spreadsheets, the pricing tools, they are all provided. And it is interactive, it engages the client, it answers the key strategic questions. Most importantly, it gives you a common view of reality, and it organically transforms your practice. And it makes the action plan so easy. It makes it so obvious, right? It makes it almost self-fulfilling. And the transformation for you, for your practice, and also for your clients happens in weeks, not years. And that's the key. I'm all about getting results fast. So you're going to educate, accelerate, and transform the results for your clients. Here's the link. And so early in the week, you're going to learn new concepts. Midweek, you're going to engage the client. Late in the week, you're going to learn some new concepts. I have office hours just for you, and I'm going to give you customized feedback. It is all included in the price of the course. And week by week until it becomes second nature to you. And if you don't believe me, I'm happy to make an introduction to Hal Rosen because he already said he'd love to talk to you about it. And again, here is the link. The lectures are pre-recorded so that it's self-paced, but if I see that you're not spending time, I'm going to ping you because I want to make sure that you get what you need. The slides are all downloadable, so you have them. You get my customized feedback. I don't ship you to a message board with people that are clueless, and I don't hand you off to somebody. You matter to me. It's me and you. There are no prerequisites for this course, by the way. And it is on demand, so you can watch them when it's convenient for you. Each lecture is going to be about 20 minutes, and there may be 4 or 5 modules in one lecture, and that's really just to give you a little bit of a breather. Edwina Glass is an amazing lady. She's somebody else who also said, you know, feel free to introduce people to me because I'm happy to tell them about the course. She said it changed my life. It changed her life, and it changed her life within 12 months. Now, she's a CPA and an Intuit Pro advisor, and she said, I did everything you said, and my wealth went up 15-fold, okay, in 12 months. So if you take the course once, you can use it forever. Accounting professionals use all the concepts in their talks when they're training, which is great. I'm thrilled. Take the message out there to the masses, friends. And accounting professionals also use these concepts in their workshops. I want you to expand the service offering for your practice because this will clearly establish you as an accounting professional, as a business advisor. And because you stayed with me for the whole presentation, I have a coupon for you. The register page right now on Ruzuku for 50% more profits in 4 weeks is a retail price of $997. And if you enter the coupon code capital S, capital N, capital H 17, you will get a $400 discount right off the top. So the price is a one-time fee of $597, and you can access it forever. And you get my personalized feedback. My personalized feedback is worth 4 times that price, just my feedback alone. And when we asked students what the course was worth, we heard everything from $2,500 to priceless. So here are some of the, this is exactly what you're going to see when you sign up for the course. You'll see this is the landing page. This is the About page. It shows you what the price is. Don't be intimidated. When you click the Register Now button, it's going to ask you for a coupon code. Just put this in, SNH17, and you'll save $400 right away. And if you order it now, you can access it forever. I will never shut this course down for you. By the way, if you want to watch the course with a partner or a subordinate, Hal Rosen did this. He had all of his staff watch it, and it completely changed the game for how they service their clients now. And don't forget, I'm here, and I'm available to you, and I'm at your side the whole time. So this is my email, dfotopulos@gmail.com, if you have any questions. And again, if you don't take the course now, then when are you going to take it? Okay? And this course is far more reasonable in price, but the value is worth millions of dollars to you. Again, this is the link. If you want to go on the link, read what it says there. If you have any additional questions, I am here for you. And I'm so glad you were with me. So this concludes guaranteeing profit for you, for your practice, and your client. I'm signing off. This is Professor Dawn Fotopulos. I'm delighted you were with me. Check out the course, 50% more profit in 4 weeks, and change your future. I'll speak to you soon.